Sorry.
It's okay. So one of the reasons why I called the caucus is I'm a little confused as to your strategy. You have a very strong statement as to the law and how the law applies to your situation, and then you're coming out and offering Dr. Lewis a job, and kind of almost backing off of that statement. What's going on?
So, I mean, we do, Dr. Ideas and I, we understand that the legal position is strong. I mean, while we do believe that ultimately Dr. Lewis did perform a poor job, he is still a very qualified individual in this field.
Okay.
And it wasn't his abilities as a doctor that failed him. It was his abilities of...
It was his direction.
Exactly, his lack of communication, and he didn't inform us of his funding. Now, granted, Dr. Lewis's attorney did have a point. If Dr. Ideas was asked at this time, or at that time, he wouldn't have had the money to fund this extra $25,000. But Dr. Ideas wasn't informed of this. So, as Dr. Lewis's attorney stated, we Dr. Lewis was held on the payroll for such a long time because we just weren't sure if Dr. Lewis could still obtain licensing. So, if Dr. Ideas would have been informed of this, then we could have shut the business venture down right there. In all honesty, then Dr. Lewis would have obtained would have actually obtained less payment if she would have communicated with us, because then we would have had that buyer then, because wouldn't have want to invest more money into this, and she would have only gotten 6 months. We kept her on for 7. So,
It's, in some ways, your position is that Dr. Lewis has already received the 6 months. It just was actually 7 months post licensing denial. But
exactly.
Okay.
And ultimately, that is probably the weak spot in our legal argument, is it's come to find out that we didn't have the money to obtain or to provide this $25,000, and that could hurt us. So, that's why I didn't want to disclose that in front of Dr. Lewis's attorney, because that could be damaging to our legal position. But ultimately, after going through the 4 elements to demonstrate for-cause termination, we thoroughly believe that all 4 of these elements were met when we terminated Dr. Lewis, because he didn't obtain his license. That was his #1 job priority, was to obtain his license. That's why we hired him as a director. That's why we compensated him beyond what most directors would receive, and ultimately, things didn't work out.
So, is the issue here that Dr. Idea didn't have enough money in the venture to begin with? Or is it that Dr. Lewis spent money on gold paperweights?
We're unsure what if Dr. Lewis could have cut some corners and saved a little bit of money. We know that Dr. Lewis spent $90,000 on laboratory equipment. I'm not sure Dr. Idea isn't sure if he could have obtained that for cheaper, but now because of this failed venture, Dr. Idea is going to have to sell this equipment, and because of the fast-paced and technological advancements in the field, there's no way, even though we've purchased this within the past year, there's no way Dr. Idea is going to be able to recover the full 90,000. So, unfortunately, he's gonna have to take a loss there, and that's just kind of why he's frustrated about this whole situation, is that he's lost a lot of money in this business venture, and now Dr. Lewis is asking for more, when all of this really could have just been stopped if Dr. Lewis informed him 6, 7 months ago and said, hey, if I, this is what I'm gonna try, if it fails, or even longer than that, if you would have informed him at the beginning of the process what happened, and then figured out that there'd be no way to obtain this license, then he could have shut it down a long time ago. Could have provided this, this termination, or the severance package for Dr. Lewis, but because of Dr. Lewis's lack of communication, my client has sustained even more economic loss than what he should have. So that's why he really just doesn't want to pay anything more, or at least he wants to mitigate as much of the loss as possible.
So you come forward with the idea of employment at the blood testing facility, which wasn't declined. It sounded like it was something that could be discussed further, but Morgan made it pretty clear that there was going to need to be something to sweeten the deal. Are you looking to sweeten the deal, or are we looking to go down another path?
I mean, my client, his main goal is to mitigate as much of the loss as possible. So he really doesn't want to put much more money into what he would consider this litigation as being still a part of that venture. With that being said, though, he said he was willing to pay Dr. Lewis some money to just get it over with. That way he avoids the legal fees and costs of litigation. But ultimately, he wants to mitigate damages as much as possible. And in our opinion, that would be bringing Dr. Lewis on as, since he is qualified as a doctor for this blood testing facility that's successful. It has plenty of funding behind it, and
it sounds like, as Morgan put it, the concern here somewhat is, what is the title going to be?
Mm-hmm.
You can't offer the directorship because that's already taken. Every bank I've ever gone to has more vice presidents than you could shake a stick at. Is there a way that we can give a title that would mean something, but maybe not rise to the level of being a director?
And I thoroughly believe we could potentially do that. We could, as you stated, we could come up with a position. While it wouldn't necessarily be a director, we could come up with a head. We could call her a head doctor. Obviously, we probably wouldn't want to compensate Dr. Lewis as well as he was in the previous contract, simply because a lot of that additional compensation was because he was having an intro-risky venture, and there was a possibility of failure.
Would there be, this may not be something that you're aware of, but are we talking at the same level that Dr. Lewis was compensated in Chicago?
We have no knowledge if Dr. Lewis's compensation.
Okay.
If we could have that information, then we would have better knowledge going forward.
Maybe that's a question that you need to ask.
But yeah, that would be perfect, and thank you for bringing that up. I'd be more than happy. Ultimately, we probably don't want to compensate her or Dr. Lewis to the same level, but I believe we would be willing to compensate to the same amount. It wouldn't be favorable, but we could probably do that.
You mentioned this lab equipment and that you're trying to unload it. And in your mediation plan and in some of your questions, it seemed kind of clear that you were looking to see if Dr. Lewis was trying to start his own or interested in starting his own. Is there something that we could do with this laboratory equipment that might be creative?
I mean, that's one reason why I was asking if Dr. Lewis was starting up his own venture, because you know, we would be willing to sell the laboratory equipment at a reduced cost to Dr. Lewis. If Dr. Lewis has some connections to maybe find someone who would purchase it above what it's worth, then so be it. But I mean, we would be willing to,
Like a commission?
exactly. So, you know, ultimately, I mean, out of all this, ultimately, we do not want to pay an additional $20,000 out of pocket. So we would be willing to almost we'd be willing to give Dr. Lewis the equipment in exchange for $60,000, kind of what we believe it's worth right now. But if Dr. Lewis can go out and sell it for $70,000, $80,000, then more power to him. And then he could keep that additional amount. But you know, we were thinking that maybe that could help out if Dr. Lewis was starting up his own venture.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to discuss with me?
I mean, probably just reiterating that we probably don't want to have mentioned to Dr. Lewis that Dr. Ideas, even if Dr. Lewis would have came to Dr. Ideas at that time, Dr. Ideas wouldn't have had the funding for it. You know, that we're just worried that if Dr. Lewis obtains that information, that they are going to think they have a strong case and is going to use that against us in litigation. So we definitely don't want to probably have them receive that information. But I mean, I would be more than happy if you wanted to share with them that we would offer them a position at the blood testing laboratory. We could compensate them at $100,000 and give them the title of head doctor at the facility. And I do understand that there could be some financial issues with Dr. Lewis, and out of that 10,000, we could,
What 10,000?
or sorry, 100,000.
Okay.
Out of that 100,000 salary, for the first year, we could probably do a 10,000, kind of like with athletes, how they get like a signing bonus. I mean, for the first year of the contract, you know, we could do it a $90,000 I guess salary with a $10,000 signing bonus almost.
Okay.
That way, if you know, if Dr. Lewis does have any financial issues that are coming about, that he could use this 10,000 to help solve those and pay back rent or anything like that, and then continue on.
Now, with athletes, signing bonuses tend to come with longevity clauses. Is there, are you just saying 1 year and you're good, or are you adding that on as well?
It would probably, how it would probably work is we would be willing to do a 2-year agreement with our employment contract. And yes, in this first year would be the only year where essentially the salary would be $90,000, the bonus would be $10,000, which Dr. Lewis would receive at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then in year 2, it would just be the full $100,000 salary.
And you want me to make that offer tomorrow?
Why don't we, or, yeah, why don't you make that offer? I feel like my client would appreciate that, approve of that.
Well, then what I'll do is I'll have you step out. Obviously, we're at that negotiation standpoint, and so having some thoughts of, if she or Dr. Lewis says no to this, what's going to be the next step? What's going to be the concession strategy moving forward? So having some thoughts about that while you're waiting for Morgan and I to have our conversation.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And I'm not sure why Skype came up.
It just always pops up. There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello.
Welcome back. All right. How we doing?
Good.
Happy with how this is going?
I mean, it's going. I guess I like to see a little bit more movement as far as paying my client and what my client owes.
And what is your client though?
I mean, my client feels, and I agree, is owed the $50,000 severance pay. I mean, okay, to be realistic, I guess I'm swearing off it. My client's definitely allowed me to accept less than that, and I'm fine doing that, but there has to be some sort of agreement as to at least confidentiality. Because my client is trying to find another job. And obviously if this gets out, this isn't gonna help my client's chances of doing that. Whether or not my client is right or wrong, it's still a stigma. And so, I mean, if I can get some movement on that, I'm definitely willing to accept less than the full 60. So I understand there is a lower at 50, like that's not a realistic number, and realistically, if we litigate with the court fees, it's not gonna work. My client's not getting 60,000 anyways.
Right. So they brought up the idea of employment. That wasn't shot down by you.
No, I mean, I guess this is just between you and me. So my client's really desperate for a job.
Okay.
He's 6 years out of retirement. He really, really needs a job. So this would be a really good opportunity. I think the big issue though is where my client feels that, they reneged on this one contract. Let's just say they won't do it again. I think there just needs to be some sort of payment off this other contract because I feel like that at least will show in good faith that they're willing to at least honor the contract to an extent.
Okay.
And that's why I'm looking at, if we can get some sort of money and not even necessarily a large chunk, then, I think that'd be something that client would definitely be open to because my client needs a job in that way.
Well, in my conversation with Benjamin, he did give me authorization to make an offer to you and your client, obviously, which I think we can structure in a way that does just that.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the one big thing is that you've mentioned confidentiality. I don't want that to get lost. And that wasn't, that hasn't come up until right now. So, if that is of exceptional importance, I think we're probably our best bet would be to bring Benjamin back in here and have a conversation about that before we move forward. Or we can move forward with the offer that he's already put on the table, and we can decide whether or not confidentiality is needed after.
I mean, if you want to discuss the deal that you gave and confidentiality and working into that, I mean, I'm fine with him going back in.
Okay. Before we bring him back in, we didn't spend much time here. Is there anything else that we should be discussing?
I mean, realistically, no. I think the big thing for my client is my client needs to find a job, and my client really doesn't want this situation to hinder that. But I mean, if they're willing to offer him a job, and again, I mean, I don't know if my client will feel completely comfortable, but I think there's going to need to be some distinct details about a harder definition of what for cause is. And I know my client's going to want substantial pay. I mean, not necessarily, at least close to what they offered him to move out here. He already moved out here. He had a good job in Chicago. I'm here to give all that up to come out here.
I mean, and you've raised the concern about, is he going to be the director? And that I mean, that has been answered. There already is a director, and so there isn't going to be an offer of being a director.
I don't think that's really the key that you
Okay.
mentioned on to my client. I mean, like it specifically mentioned to me, I think that was more just a question of, for me, so I can tell my client
Sure.
the offer of the position, but we didn't discuss that he said he needs to be a director.
Okay.
That wasn't an issue.
Okay. Well, but with the title comes the funds in some ways.
I think
and so there may be, it may be, and it may be that the amount that's being offered is commensurate on the position that's being offered. And if it was a director position, that's one thing, but a non-director position would be offered something else. So I don't know that the answer is going to be the same as what he was being paid.
Okay. I mean, that's something I'm willing to listen to, and I mean,
Sure.
again, obviously, like, I can agree today, to at least go talk to my client about it, but I mean, I can't fully agree to anything as far as the job wise.
Okay.
That I don't feel like I was really completely authorized to do, but I definitely can agree to the other stuff. And
Sure.
at least discuss it with my client.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that's fine. I think I'm ready to talk to Ben and offer.
All right. All right. So where we're at is, after having talked to both of you, Ben, you gave me the authority to make an offer to Morgan, which I have not done yet. And part of the reason is that Morgan brought up something that she would like to see and her client would like to see as a part of the agreement, and that I think we should have a conversation about that, and then we can have then we can make the offer. And there's actually one tweak that I think we can make to the offer that would meet everyone's interests. But
Great.
if you want to discuss what's really holding us up on Dr. Lewis's end right now.
Yeah, the big issue for my client is confidentiality. And that's something, I mean, I don't know if that's something you guys were expecting or not, but that's just something that my client, especially because he's searching for a job right now, really is very important to him. Because he doesn't want this situation to hinder job opportunities for him. And that's something that we're going to need if we're going to reach an agreement today.
I believe that we can include that along with the potential hiring, or if you choose, you would like to go to another avenue. We believe that we could potentially have some confidentiality. Not if the price is right. I don't want to sound like Bob Barker, but if things work out.
Okay.
Then,
But that's something if you want. So what is his first offer? Or is his offer for me?
So normally I would really want you to make the offer, but because I am making a tweak to it, would it be all right if I make the offer on your behalf?
Of course.
Okay. And so the offer at this point would be a $10,000 payment up front, which we can call it whatever we want, whether it's a signing bonus or a settlement of the past due amount on this termination, however we want to term it. And then with that comes a job at the blood laboratory with the title of head doctor and a salary in the first year of $90,000. This would be a 2-year contract with a stated second year salary of $100,000. They accurately reflect what we talked about?
Okay, so going along those lines, yeah, it's definitely something I think that is looking good so far. I guess my question then will be, so what is going to be, is there going to be a termination clause or something like that? Because I feel, just speaking with my client, I mean, if there's going to be one, I think there needs to be a harder definition of for cause, just so my client knows exactly what to expect. Because I mean, again, as we discussed, my client's biggest issue is being able to trust that what happened in this first situation doesn't happen again.
Of course, and I mean, we could definitely try to we could both hash out a confidentiality clause along with this termination clause. Now, obviously, since Dr. Lewis wouldn't have to start up a laboratory and have to perform a number of, I guess, logistical issues. I mean, in this position, he could fulfill his duties as a doctor. So he wouldn't have that ambiguity of having to obtain a license, having that contingency on if there is poor performance, then, you know.
And I think what Benjamin's saying is Dr. Lewis is going to get back to what he's great at. And what made him stand out and be of such interest to Dr. Idea in the first place is going to be what he's going to be doing and what he succeeded at. So he's going to be doing again.
Exactly. And that way, not that it would be any concern, because obviously Dr. Lewis is very well respected in the field, but he wouldn't have to, he would be doing what he is known for, and that is being a doctor. So we wouldn't have that concern of poor performance.
Well, and that's where confidentiality comes in for him, because again, yes, he is very well respected in his field, and he is known for being good at what he does, and we want to keep it that way. And he doesn't, and I don't really want this to be the black mark on his record. So I would, for sure, there would need to be a confidentiality clause in there that if we settle, this does not plead mediation.
Of course, and
I think as we're talking, I think maybe Morgan, if you could explain to Ben where we're at in terms of authority on this, I think that would be helpful.
I mean, I am authorized to accept the payment, and I'm authorized to determine confidentiality. I don't think I'm completely authorized to accept the job on his behalf. I think that it's something my client is definitely interested in based on what I know his needs are. So I think we can potentially agree to this, but I will have to get one more final authorization from my client before we put it in writing.
Gotcha.
But I think we could tentatively agree to something along these lines.
Gotcha. And yeah, I agree. If we can have Dr. Lewis agree to the position and everything, and on top of, with the concerns surrounding confidentiality, we'd be more than happy to do that. And in addition, it would probably look even better that, while Dr. Lewis, we can even say that Dr. Lewis wasn't fired. We can say that he was reassigned. If that's even better. That way, he won't have that blemish. We can say that he was reassigned to a head doctor position. I know they do that with a lot of college coaches. If you have your guy in there for a million years and then he's not doing what he's doing, they reassign him to something with like fundraising. So this way we could say, hey, he wasn't fired. He was reassigned to head doctor of our successful blood laboratory, rather than having this potential mark on his resume.
Yes, that would be much appreciated, especially by my client. I think two things from me. So when the 2-year contract's up, does he have an ability to renew the contract if he does a good job, or is it just for the 2 years and then he'll have to find something else?
We can discuss a clause that would allow for renegotiation. The actual term is slipping my mind at the moment, but we could have a period where, like a 90 or like a 30-day period before the end of this agreement to discuss the terms of future employment contract.
Okay, and I mean, the only other thing, I guess, where I'm still kind of stuck is, he's taking a substantial pay cut, which I understand he's not gonna be a director. So I guess where I feel like my client might not be completely comfortable is the 10,000.
Well, as stated earlier, so the first year of the contract, while he is taking a pay cut, the salary was paid to Dr. Lewis because we understood that he was making this move and that he was taking some risk at a venture that could potentially fail. So whenever I discussed with Mike this potential offer, it was in regards to that this risk that Dr. Lewis initially had isn't there. He's joining a very successful clinic.
I understand that. Where I'm coming from is that he still performed 6 months of work. And I'm not asking at this point for the 60,000. I understand that you guys moved and have made a generous offer to my client. So I'd be willing to accept less than 60,000, but I think 10,000, that's 1/6 of, paying for 1/6 of the work that he did.
Well,
It's not my understanding.
yeah, because it would be, this 6 months would be because he was terminated. So since the contract was terminated, he would receive, like, he got paid for the work that he performed. It would be, he's searching for 60,000 following the conclusion of the work that he's done.
That was severance pay.
Yeah, so the severance pay would be pay that he received for, what Dr. Lewis is asking for is severance pay for the work he would have done if he was still hired.
Right, sorry. I'm not kind of confused with the terms.
No worries.
Um,
There's been a lot of terms thrown around.
But I mean, yeah, so he still feels that he's owed the 60,000 severance pay, so that's still 1/6 of what he feels he's owed.
Well, I would say, think of it this way. Instead of getting severance pay for kind of just sitting around or searching for a job, which he would have to go and search out another job. He already receives this position. It's almost like he's getting 90,000. It's just, instead of having to go and search out for a job, he's already got one, so he knows that he's employed.
But that's if my client chooses to accept the job. Because again, there's still.
I think this would be, the entire agreement is contingent.
Yes, I understand that. I just mean, so if he doesn't accept the job, he doesn't accept the agreement, so then he's not getting paid for anything still.
I think the way that I would discuss that as a group is, we give you the opportunity to meet with your client, discuss whether or not this is acceptable, whatever we come up with in terms of a final discussion piece for you and your client. If it's not acceptable, we come back to mediation, maybe at a time where both of your clients are available, so that we can have a more complete discussion.
I mean, I think that's definitely doable. I think as long as the confidentiality clause is promised and is upheld, I think that this is something I can pitch to my client. And I think that in the situation my client is right now, I think this is something my client would agree to. I think I just need to, like I said, final authorize with my client based on whether or not he wants to continue having a working relationship with Dr. Idea.
And I mean, I believe we can have this, include this confidentiality if Dr. Lewis does accept the terms of employment. If Dr. Lewis doesn't accept the terms of employment, then we could definitely sit down again and potentially hash out a resolution to avoid any future litigation or any issues with between our clients.
Okay, so at this point, we're tentatively agreeing to the 10,000 and then the job with the contract details that we discussed with the potential renewal clause and a confidentiality clause and a more definitive termination clause, correct?
And, I mean, yeah, we can hash out that, termination clause right now, and we can also.
I think that's something we can worry about after I get authorization from my client to accept the position. Because I was just gonna say, then we can just agree, give me 3 or 4 days to talk to my client, and then we can just agree to meet to hash out the final details of the contract.
Gotcha.
Is that agreeable for you?
If, the being above named, Professor Holtz believes that's an acceptable way to do this, I think we can.
I think that's fine. And then, I guess the final thing I want to agree to today before we go would be that if my client did not for some reason want to accept the job, that we agree to mediate, or to come back to mediation to try and solve the issue.
As you mentioned, if you're, after you present this information to your client, we can meet, back for mediation, continue some mediation a week from now, to, come up with a potential, new settlement agreement if this one, does not suffice.
Okay, well, I'll need 3 days to get ahold of my client. Sometimes difficult to get ahold on the doctor, so.
Understood.
And then at that point, we can agree that the 4 of us will need to hash out.
And don't forget to let me know.
Yes.
So I
Of
can
course.
keep that off of my calendar and release that time.
Is that available? All right. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, we are tentatively agreeing to Dr. Lewis accepting the position of head doctor at Dr. Idea's blood laboratory. Dr. Lewis would receive a $10,000 initial, almost like a signing bonus to.
And that'll be received immediately.
It would be received immediately, because we understand that Dr. Lewis may have some bills or that,
Yes.
so.
So that would be immediately as one payment.
Correct, that would be received the moment he walks in there.
Okay.
And then throughout the year, he would receive a $90,000 salary for the first year. Second year of the contract, he would receive a bump up to $100,000 as his salary, but this would not include a beginning of. So yeah, it would not include that.
That's.
And then we can agree to revise the termination clause. We can agree to have a negotiating period 30 days before termination to see if both parties would like to extend employment. And you know, because this issue came to be because of a lack of communication, not only between Dr. Lewis, but also on Dr. Idea's behalf, why don't we set up maybe 2 meetings, just to have the 2 sit down and communicate out any potential issues with the employment, or just kind of communicate how everything's going, so we could have.
That's fine.
All right, so 2 meetings a year, is that acceptable?
Biannual is fine.
All right.
It can be every 6 months. Does that work for you?
I believe that will work. And then, my client would just like to communicate that, you know, if Dr. Lewis has any issues, feel free to call him, he'll be more than happy to listen to what Dr. Lewis has to say, or any advice Dr. Lewis would have on running this blood clinic.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, and this would also include the confidentiality.
Okay, and then, so we're agreeing on that, and then final is that if those terms of employment are rejected, then we'll come back in a week and we'll mediate.
Correct.
The only other thing that I have on my list is that this be returned as a reassignment and not a termination.
Oh, yes, and then, thank you.
Then, yeah, I think we're good.
All right, thank you both.
Perfect.
Contact
Thank
me
you
in
very
3
much.
days. I'll find out. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir mediator, what's the proper, I know it's,
Say things fine, right?
Yeah, Mike
Yeah.
is
He
fine.
told us comment.
sorry. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Attorney Delucia.
Thanks, Ben. Oh. Yeah, no, my client basically, or my client attorney basically was like, you hate mediation, you think it's stupid. I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's just proceed as. you
We
can.
think, we were actually wondering about the agreement we made a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit.
Well,
We,
Well,
Let's vote in the other way.
let's debrief.
oh, okay.
with the class.
Perfect.
We'll be there in a minute. I literally, when I read this, I was like, oh, I could just work for them. And then it's like, shit, I can just say that.